Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most amazing things about watching computer chess engines go up against one another in TSEG, the Top Chess Engine Championship, or basically anywhere else, is the fact that they introduce completely unheard of opening ideas. Throughout human history, whenever a strong player would play a new opening idea in a tournament, it would be studied, dissected, oftentimes by hand and by the human mind, and then it would be implemented, or it would be improved upon, or thrown into the garbage. Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 chess engine ideas that were played in a variety of different openings. We're going to begin with the one that Stockfish played, and then we're just going to talk about all of them, and I'm going to kind of just show you how obscene they are, and then we will finish the game. So timestamps are on the video player. The first game is between Stockfish and Slow Chess. I mean, you really couldn't curse an engine more than this. And this game is actually from a game that was played yesterday in an online event, which inspired this entire video. So, Slow Chess begins with a Con Sicilian. This is a Sicilian that is incredibly imbalanced. Oftentimes, black will develop the queen and the bishop on the dark squares. B5 will come with the bishop to this diagonal, queenside pressure. And in this opening, white plays c4. This is one of the advantages of black not attacking anything in the middle. You see, if, for example, knight c6 is played here, at least there is already something to deal with. And also there is knight f6, which can lead to an entirely different variation. So because a6 is played, the players play like this, and black plays queen c7. This has been played many, many times before. Stockfish plays bishop e3, and then bishop e2, and plays the move f3. So black chooses a hedgehog setup. And this is one of the options that you can play if you're going to play a Sicilian defense. Extremely flexible, dynamic setup, very spiky. And the idea is that maybe in the future you will strike with one of these 2 pawn breaks and explode the board. So white plays g4. All right, plays g4 very early to basically show the indication that the move g5 is going to happen. But this is not the crazy idea. The crazy idea comes a little bit later in the form of king to d2. They say, what? what? Huh? Now, the craziest thing is, if you let Stockfish run, it actually likes both king moves. It doesn't like king f1. It only likes king f2 and king d2. So this happened yesterday in a game played between Jordan van Forest and Eric Hansen. And I think it was in maybe this position, very similar position, where king d2, king c2, king b1 happened. Where in the middle of the position, Jordan just literally took his king, and manually walked it to b1. Got it out of danger, and then proceeded to attack. Well, this game predates that game. I don't know if he got it from this game in particular, but the fact that you could play g4 and not, queen b3 or something like this, to my human eye, looks far smarter. Long castles, then king b1. I mean, what are we even doing here? Well, apparently, because you need to deal with the c-file first, and you've already committed the g-pawn, short castles doesn't make any sense because you want to attack with these pawns. But then why wouldn't you move the queen and... I don't know. But this is apparently the way you do this. Now king c2 and king to b1. I mean, are you kidding me? What even is that? All right? I'm out here trying to teach beginners not to make multiple piece moves in the opening, castle early, and then Stockfish here is like, I'm the best thing that ever existed. King d2, king c2, king b1. 3 king moves, like nothing is even happening. I can't begin to explain this to you. I honestly can't. I guess basically the understanding is that the black position is not yet ready. It's not like, it's not like a popcorn kernel. You can't really eat it. It's that gross thing right in the middle. It needs more heat before it can start, popping out. And while it needs that time, white consolidates and is ready to play, queen d2 and h4. White has the absolutely perfect setup here to create complications. But why on earth does white need the rook here? Like, again, mathematically, why couldn't white play queen d2, long castle, king b1, rook c2? I don't know, but instead we have this. And watch what Stockfish does from this point forward. From this point forward, it's just engine, it's just an engine game. But king d2, king c2, king b1 in a hedgehog Maroczy style bind against the Khan. And as the game goes on, well, white just, it's engine style, very slowly building up, ends up a little bit later sacrificing. So white sacrifices the rook for the knight. And yeah, I mean, well, we have the attack rages on. We have very typical computer stuff here, closing 2 bishops out of the game. On the one hand, we have 2 pawns blocking this bishop, and we have their own pawns blocking this bishop, and white just has more activity. And this rook on the h-file is sort of stranded. White very slowly just inches forward, typical engine stuff, just, you know, look at this, sacrificing a pawn and then giving up another one. So now, technically, slow chess is up 3 points of material, but the evaluation is +7. So add that up. 3 points and it's +7. That means it's a 10-point advantage for Stockfish, which just plays bishop f4. There is now a hanging knight, but bishop e5 is coming, and you just win the game on the dark squares. So, I mean, you basically render all the black pieces completely useless, and you infiltrate with your army, and at some point you start picking up the material. And white is just a rook up, but it's worse than that. It's mate, and it's coming very soon. And for some reason in these engine battles, they tend to not resign until they just play. They play until checkmate, but Stockfish gets the win. But again, what? Like, what did we just watch? Again, instant replay in the middle of the game, just totally normal. King d2, king c2, king b1. Well, that's how you know we're going to be off to a good start, right? So this entire video is going to be redefining what we know about the openings. No human in history will play king d2, king c2, king b1. I mean, you will be kicked out of the tournament and probably alcohol, drug tested, psychiatric tested, you name it, okay? So the second game that I have for you is a game between Komodo and Stockfish. This one is actually from the recently concluded TSEC final. And this one was this sideline variation, a kind of an anti-Grunfeld. Because, you know, when black plays this, it's either a King's Indian or a Grunfeld. This is an anti-Grunfeld because black could still play the King's Indian, right? So if black was trying to play the Grunfeld defense, f3 is actually a thing. But this is not a thing. Not at all. Less than 0.1% of games have ever gone knight h5. And the most incredible thing about the move knight h5 is that on the surface, it looks like g4 simply wins the knight. I mean, or black has to go back, right? So if you can't go forward. Knight g7, I mean, h4, like, what are we even doing here, right? But g4 is a bad move because black will play e5. And if you take the knight, there is this dynamite check. If you block, you get mated, so it's never too early to lose the game. You would know something about this, right? So bishop b4 check would come, and then after knight c3, there is still this, and this, and this. And black is winning the material back, and the white king is very weak. So g4, e5 leads to some completely absurd variations after something like knight h3 to try to cover this check, knight g7. This has been played a couple of times in Blitz by some strong players, but I mean, this just looks like a bad, you know, drug trip, like a chess equivalent. I mean, I have simply no idea what the move knight h5 even is. But Komodo plays e4, so actually it deems that the knight on h5 is a little bit stupid, but of course Stockfish responds with e5. This is the entire idea, actually. So you try to take advantage of this f3 move with the move knight h5. I mean, engines are just the dumbest, smartest things ever. e5. Now, in this position, bishop e3 is considered the best move. Again, you cannot take because this is simply too strong. And then there's always knight g3 stuff with the rook being captured. But there is bishop e3. And in the game, Stockfish played the move d6. So I will show you what happened in this game. However, a hypothetical thing that could have happened here had Stockfish played something different was the following variation that Komodo saw. You are not ready for this. Well, you are because you're here. Knight c6. Okay, natural move. Now white will play d5. Okay, now in this position, there is bishop to b4 check. You know, just trying to activate some pieces. And here, Komodo wants to play king e2. Okay. Why? I mean, what was wrong with... Here's the idea. The knight is hanging. Right? The knight is... You don't want to go here. You're going to lose a pawn, so you go back. You go to e7, you cut off your own bishop. Now, a3. So if you go this way, that's very easy. You don't have to be a genius to understand that losing a bishop is game over. So king e2 is played to kick out the knight and then kick out the bishop, right? All right, great. But now how are you going to develop? I mean, what do you can't put your king in the middle of everything. Yeah, king d3. Yeah, I'm serious. Like, Komodo wants to do that. I mean, what am I supposed to do with this? I mean, I have made a career educating beginners and intermediate players on chess. What is this? You see this? All of my content is obsolete. No one, this is, I mean, come on. What are we even looking at? This is a line. The computer legitimately with a straight face wants to play this. And the crazy thing is that you can't even do anything. The best move here is d6. Just playing normally, ignoring this. If you play f5, I mean, it's not too late to lose. You know, pawn takes, f4, attacking the knight. Black's position is just not equipped to attack the center immediately. That didn't happen, though. But I wanted to share it because it was completely ridiculous. I saw this on Matthew Sadler, who's a very strong English grandmaster. And he's worked on Game Changer, Alpha Zero stuff. So I saw it on his Twitter, and I was like, what? And the game didn't go like that. The game actually became a relatively normal-looking position where, you know, Stockfish just played with a slight space disadvantage, and Komodo tried to kick it out. And in the long run, you know, Stockfish in this head-to-head match against Komodo, in worse openings, would try to draw, and in the flip side, on the stronger side of the worse opening, would try to win. And if you haven't watched my video, Stockfish is the world champion, Stockfish managed to defend itself against all of these positions. So, I mean, if you notice, White has a dominant space advantage, Black has absolutely zero counterplay. Yeah, even though Komodo was putting kind of nonstop pressure, Stockfish actually in this game ended up sacrificing a rook. You notice sacrificing a rook, and then this bishop, this dark squared bishop, was just a killer. Keep this bishop in mind, by the way. Keep this bishop in mind and the rook in mind, and just kind of this counterplay, because this is going to pop up a little bit later in the video. The engines ended up battling for a while, and Stockfish was able to repel the forces. You notice that White has everybody on the king side, but on the verge of a breakthrough, we go into a rook versus bishop endgame, and I will show the conclusion of this game because it is very funny. I apologize, it's not this game, it's a little bit later. This game just ends in a draw because you would have to defend this, and the king and the pawn cancel each other out. This is just simply a draw because you will trade the final pawn. So, yeah, move 3, almost novelty. I mean, one of the most dumb things I've ever seen. Yeah, putting a king on d3, of course. No, I mean, duh, yeah. How did you not know about that? What, you guys don't study your engine games? Fourth game that I have for you is a game between Stockfish, which is probably Dutch because it's an absurd name, or you know, it's Flemish, but it sounds Dutch, versus Scorpio, or Scorpion NT, actually, I saw this on Kingscrusher's channel. He's a OG on YouTube. I believe it was this one. This is a King's Indian defense by Black, obviously, and White is playing something known as the fianchetto variation. So a very suffocating kind of variation, very annoying variation. You know, not entering the mainline territory, but you also committed knight f3 move 1, whereas if you played a King's Indian defense in kind of a traditional style like this, you don't have a knight on f3, so you can play 4 pawns, you can play Samish as we've just seen, but here we have a fianchetto King's Indian defense. Now, the most incredible thing about this game is that everything you've seen thus far, the king walks and all that, that's just like absurdly stupid looking stuff that turns out to be good. What we see in this game is not something that ridiculous, which actually turns out to be very powerful. So, bishop f5. Here there's a couple of ways for Black to play. Obviously, e5 is sort of always the idea. a6 to play b5 later is an idea. Bishop f5 is designed to prevent anything from going to e4, and if you attack me, I just go back. And then if you try to play e4, great, I'm ready with e5. So d5 has always been considered not super great after knight a5. Like, it's a little bit annoying. The point is that this pawn is hanging, and you cannot play the move b3 because that walks directly into this line of attack. So obviously you play either knight here attacking this, knight here attacking this, or knight d2. So I think knight d2 here is, as far as I know, like the main line by far. And then Black will play this so the knight doesn't get trapped, and then e4, and it's just very complicated. However, this is why we are here, because I just told you, you cannot play the move b3, which gets played in the game. And then after the move b3 was played in this game, it started getting played by like random grandmasters. So like you check the database. Now, what the heck is going on here? Well, Again, this is the entire point. Now black attacks this knight twice. You can't defend it. You have to take the knight. You have to lose with the rook. But the computer claims it's far from over. It is far from over. The idea is knight to d4. So now black's bishop is hit, and I'm also threatening to move bishop to h6. So I'm going to be attacking this, and my bishop is not necessarily going to take the rook, but I will mate you. So if bishop takes d4, queen d4, I mean, this is sort of everything that white wants. I think the engine will win this all the time. However, there is this move, and in the game, we have this. However, there is one absolutely idiotic variation here that I must show you. White can ignore the recapture and play bishop h6, okay? The reason for this is that bishop g2, queen a1, bishop f1, there is the incredible knight e6. So this is Stockfish's, this is Stockfish's idea. Mate and a queen is hanging and a rook is hanging. So everything is hanging. The knight is an idiot, the bishop is trapped. However, here there is the response, bishop b1. You cannot take because now I take the knight and it's no longer defended. But I could go here and then queen f8 and then something like knight back or even queen d2 with an x-ray. So takes, no, queen d2 in this case wouldn't work because of bishop d4, but it would work in this case because take, there is mate. So bishop to b1. I mean, I'm telling you, when you clicked on this video, were you expecting this kind of idiocy? No, you were not. Don't lie to yourself. Well, in the game, this happened, and there's always variations where the sides kind of keep close, keep a very close evaluation. In this game, we just got a very normal looking position. So literally, Stockfish just gives up a rook for a piece and then acts like nothing happened. Now, why do you think white did this? Because white understands that white has 5 active pieces that are ready to go on an attack, right? They're ready to go h4, h5. And that's exactly what white does. Now, black cannot play h5. Normally, you meet h4 with h5. Here's the problem. After something like knight g5, if black tries to do something here, f4, like, you just get killed. So, black's play is way too slow. White is the one attacking. Every single piece white has is attacking. 5 pieces. The knight, the bishops, both bishops. I don't care if this bishop is back here. It's taking part in the game. So, black plays b5. Sacrifices and tries to both play defense on this side of the board and offense, right? Bishop back to d3, queen c2, and e4. And obviously, all engine games at some point, they're not just, it's not one side completely decimating another side. There's a lot of back and forth. Black has to decide whether to be active or go this way. But over the course of time in this game, it was the white pieces, the 5 pieces that coordinated well and removed defenders and continued the attack. And over the course of the game, look at this, king g2, rook h1, white built up the pressure, defended everything in the position, and broke through. I mean, it took a little while, but again, every piece is involved, and this knight is just a joke, right? And even though the evaluation is actually kind of like close, and the counterplay is there, at some point, the pressure just simplifies into a losing middle endgame. So unlike humans who have a bloodlust for checkmate in a position like this, like you think this, you're not thinking I'm going to win the endgame, you're thinking I'm going to deliver mate. Engines don't care about that. They care about winning the game the way they can. And well, in the long run, white just absolutely dominated and found a 3-on-1. You do not have to give mate, you just have to win the game. The 3-on-1 proves to be superior, constantly threatening to push. White jumps around, ends up getting a 3-on-0, and has a queen and black doesn't. So this idea of d5, knight a5, and playing a move that is legitimately impossible completely puts this variation at risk for black. I mean, b3, a move that is not playable whatsoever, and now there is knight d2. Now black could avoid this. Black could just play the position the way it's normally supposed to be played, but maybe now white gets bishop b2. Bishop b2 is not something white is supposed to ever get in this position, right? And the reason for that is now the bishops see each other. So in the long run, maybe you have some situation where you get something that was never supposed to happen, which is bad. So b3, knight e4, I think now with best play, maybe black can hold, but my goodness, is this entire idea a huge question mark. Completely rendering the knight offside. The knight never found a way back into the game as white gave up the rook to win time and to win material that is actually useful. White had 5 useful pieces. Black had maybe 2 the entire game. So materially speaking, black was winning, but positionally speaking, white was pressuring the entire game. So b3, I mean, my goodness, what on earth did we just see? Third one, AlphaZero and Stockfish, when they played their match, fourth one. When they played their match, they completely pioneered a ton of new ideas in the London system. So since this match was played, this mainline London position with knight d2, most people play e6 here or cd with a bishop move, but queen b6, trying to immediately punish white for being a little bit careless here, seems to be a good move. And dc5, queen b2, rook b1, queen c3 is all known. Bishop b5. So AlphaZero plays this idea. Now, you'll say, well, Levy, that's just a free pawn. It is. It is. c4 here is extremely strong and extremely tricky. Basically, the queen is just surrounded by an army of pieces that can kick her around. And it's very difficult to operate. So black normally plays e6 and white castles. And in this position, it's relatively well known that, again, taking the pawn with either thing is too dangerous. Queen c5, there is always c4. And bishop c5, there's like this. I mean, there's all sorts of nasty stuff here. Bishop c7, for example, threatens to win the queen. I mean, it's a very, very messy position, and thus people play bishop e7 and just try to castle. However, there is no bishop e7 and try to castle when your opponent is AlphaZero. So back then, AlphaZero introduced an idea, although it's a little bit confusing because, I mean, it allegedly introduced an idea, but at the same time, I don't know, like, I've seen one game in the database with this idea prior to AlphaZero, but the idea is e4. So, middle of a game, just sack a pawn. Not only sack a pawn, you sack a pawn with tempo. Here's the idea. Knight c4. If they take your knight, then the queen is trapped. The queen is completely trapped. You just win a queen. Kind of simple, right? So you play knight c4 with the idea to go knight d6 and also rook b3. So if black castles and doesn't take your knight, this also traps the queen. So it's not only that, it's also bringing the bishop back and trapping the queen, not for a rook, right? If you have a choice between giving up a bishop or a rook for a queen, you should give up the bishop, right? So e4, and if black plays knight e4, there is the absolutely amazing variation where you chop twice and play bishop d6. This move prevents black from castling, right? And if black chooses to take your knight, you play takes, check, hunt the king out into the open, and very promptly proceed to threaten both mate and the winning of the queen. And you win the game in about 15 moves. So e4, this entire idea, DC, queen b2. If you look at the database from this first time it was played in 2018, 2019, it's all top guys. All of it. I mean, it's like Magnus, Ding, Aronian, Wesley, Ferrugia, all the guys going into the Cool Kids Club of this engine stuff. And yeah, this e4 move is shocking. The way the game actually went between AlphaZero was that it obviously didn't take the bait, and instead we got a position where white was down a pawn with a massive lock on the center. So g6, you cannot take the knight because discovered check and I win the queen. So this entire game was AlphaZero pressuring Stockfish. Watch. I mean, locking down the king side. So just like last game, right? Active pieces actually involved in the game. And AlphaZero spent this entire game trying to take Stockfish's soul. Pay attention to Stockfish's pieces, which just basically don't move at all. Stockfish also found the only defensive idea, which is this recreational rook attack. And I mean, this looks like black is on the verge of death. Right? And now we attack on the B file. We're getting in on both sides, but it's Stockfish. I mean, it is basically playing only moves, Herculean defensive task that I think no human would be able to accomplish. And this game had a very funny finish where AlphaZero got fed up with Stockfish's defenses and allowed it to make a queen. So it allowed it to make a queen with the intention of sacrificing for a draw. It sacrifices to make a draw, of course they could just repeat moves, but they're engines, so they have a sense of humor, and they don't. Instead, it takes the bishop. It's still a draw because of how weak Black's king is, but White's king is also a little bit weak. But AlphaZero continues to harass Black, and actually Black is losing here. Black is losing, if not for one defensive resource, which is sacrificing the queen. And the rook, because it's stalemate. Because Black is stalemated, even though 2 pawns are on the board, they can't move. So Black sacrifices a queen and a rook. I mean, it's unbelievable. Queen and a rook to survive. And obviously, White chooses not to take it and just repeats moves because, again, engines have a sense of humor, so they just repeat moves. But this London idea of DC and then later on E4 has been played about 200-300 times since AlphaZero played it. It's constantly pumping new and new ideas into it, and it's just interesting. I mean, like I said, the whole point of this video is to show how engines show us things that we probably would have not found for ourselves in about 10, 15, maybe 20 years. I mean, it's just such an absurd line. Like, who even thinks of E4? Like, if you look at this, of course you think knight D4, knight E5 to pressure the knight, but yeah, E4 is incredible, and for Black to take is too dangerous. The last game that I have for you is a game between Leela and Stockfish. This was less shocking and more fascinating, and I'll tell you why. Again, actually, credit to Kingscrusher. I don't know if I saw this game and the other game, but Kingscrusher has a lot of very interesting, and he's, like I said, he's an OG of YouTube and the whole streaming thing for chess. So we have a Benoni. We actually have a 4 pawns Benoni because C, D, E, and F all got involved. Now, this position is extremely theoretical. I'm not going to really get into it too much, but basically White tries to beat Black into a hole in the first 10 moves. So if Black plays this, there is E5. I mean, it looks like you're just simply losing. It's not quite that simple, as White has to, deal with Queen H4. Not the first time in this video we've seen this. You've been paying attention? And there's theory here like this. I think I had this in some, I don't know. I remember having this variation in some file of mine somewhere. But anyway, knight BD7 is not the move. Black actually has to play this to open the bishop and make sure that E5 no longer comes with tempo. Don't worry about the theory. That is not the most impressive part. The most interesting thing about this game, first of all, here White can take on D7 or go back. I think Kasparov once took on D7. Not the point. The point is this position. This is the Benoni. In the Benoni, White has much more space and is constantly looking at E5, F5 moving forward. Black has the E file, so Black will always try to create pressure here, pressure on this diagonal, and sort of vague pressure on the queen side with moves like C4, something on the dark squares, knight here, and rook B8, B5. In the long run, these 3 pawns will try to go here and here. This bishop is very important. White will try to go this way. So it's very common here to play like bishop F2 and then like bishop H4 to like just get rid of the knight and put a thorn in the position. Black tries to create counterplay. White tries to play E5, right? So this is like all extremely common. E5, just chop, 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 go through the position. And so that actually happened in this game. White played knight D2, is ready for this. Rook B8, right? So Black wants the queen side and the E-file. White wants the king side, right? Simple enough, okay? Until this game. In this game, Leela showed a completely new approach to playing the Benoni. Completely new. Like, okay, I'm sure you can find some historical games. White does not play on the queen side. All right, White is trying to play where White has more space. Bishop F2, Bishop H4. In this game, Leela says, King H1. Now, again, Bishop F2, Bishop H4 is unbelievably popular. G4, G5 ideas, E5, F5. We have King H1 and this. I mean, what on earth is King H1, Bishop G1? Leela basically is arguing that Black has a game plan. Black has to implement that game plan or else Black's position is horrible, right? Because White will just play a bunch of normal moves like G4. So, for example, like if Black does nothing, Rook A8, Bishop G1, Rook B8, White is now going to play Knight C4, preventing the queen side from moving, or will play G4, G5, H4, H5, like just go for an attack. White will find some way to attack. So black plays all the moves that they're supposed to play. C4, right? Shutting everything down. I literally just talked about this. And now white's like, rook A7. And Leela goes, I'm actually going to attack you on the queen side. A completely new approach to the position. Some of you might not really appreciate this because, you know, it's one thing when it's like boom, 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 checkmate. It's another thing when it's like, oh, well, you're not supposed to play on that side, but you are playing on that side, right? So people are like, I don't know the difference. I've never seen this in my life anyway. I'm only rated like 600. This is why engines are so special, because they play in ways that we would never think of. So for the remainder of this game, watch what Leela does. It invites the pawns in. It invites the pawns in, and black obliges, because if black just takes, the knight is hanging, right? So now we have a position that ends up being, there are some trades. I guess if you want to go move by move, you're like, this knight is hanging. The reason why white is not moving the knight out of the danger zone is because these two pawns restrict this knight. So Leela doesn't want its knight in jail. It actually wants to get rid of that knight. It's deliberately sacrificing the other knight, which it's really trying. Okay, and it now ends up getting the two pawns. But look at this position. This is not the way the Benoni is supposed to be played, ever. The Benoni is a kingside attack for white, fighting back against the queenside initiative. Well, in this game, Leela flips the script entirely, puts 4 of its 5 pieces on. It might as well play knight f1 too here. Come on, have a sense of humor. And then just begins attacking on the queenside and spends the duration of this game consolidating, plays the move b4, which looks like it can be taken by both. In fact, it probably should be taken, because if you don't take it, I play b5, b6, and I win. So now we get this, and now Leela's just up a full piece with the pawns all on the same side. Maybe black can defend this, but it's highly unlikely. And white now spends the remainder of the game dominating the dark squares and slowly, okay, picking up a pawn, not allowing black to tie their pawns together. And it takes a little while. It takes like 15, 20 more moves. But we get there in the end. Very slowly, we crawl out of the position. And look at this. We force the pawn forward. Just one move at a time, right? I mean, you can't forget, Stockfish is one of the best defenders in the world. So it's going to take time. We get the trade. The pawns are completely frozen. And now white is just going to swarm. Black resigns on move 79 because you're just not going to stop the initiative. So, you know, knight g5, king f6. And if you just go back and forth here, I'll bring my king. Then I will get to the back rank, and I'm going to win the pawn on g7. So, yeah, I think this was the last move that was played. I would imagine that black resigned, but yeah, I think black resigned. So go back, or maybe black lost on time, although I don't think that's possible. So bishop b5, bishop e2, and then this entire approach of playing on the other side of the board. This one is probably the least shocking of any that you saw in this video. Doesn't make it any less impressive. It's a completely different way of playing the opening. So now we know. And now for the future, maybe in a Benoni game, I'll play king h1, bishop g1, because I know that I can attack on the queen side. I don't have to always attack in the middle. So this was 5 examples, most of which featured Stockfish, but obviously other engines as well, of just how much influence some of these computers can have on our openings, and how can they can redefine our thought process, not just on moves specifically, but ideas moving forward. Let me know if you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you want more engine videos. I'll happily read through the comments and pick out your ideas for future content. I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.